But what happened to your ability to read over time, Logan?
I got better at it.
So then what happened to your confidence?
Um, I my confidence was very high. I just knew I was gonna do good with it. So now I'm actually reading with the class, like raising my hand to actually read.
No way. They're not supposed to do that with dyslexic kids. That's horrible. Who's doing that?
We're
But
Batman.
why? Why, Logan? Why are you raising your hand to read in class?
Because I just know the words now because of this program.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of my absolutely favorite podcast. This is Dyslexia Success Stories. This is where we get to break down the barriers when people think that dyslexia is lifelong, you're going to struggle your whole life to read and spell. We're going to challenge that notion because maybe that's actually an existing belief because there's so many poor programs that are used for literacy instruction. Or maybe it's something different, meaning poor diagnosis, poor understanding, but maybe it's actually not the brain of the person that have dyslexia that makes it so hard to learn how to read and spell. So today we're going to talk to a family, and it's Logan and his mom and dad, the Miller family. We're going to hear how they learned about struggles, what they learned in the research. Mom has a behaviorist background. She understands about data and science and behavior, and dad understands academics is important, and the family wants everyone to do well. And so we're not going to wait. We're going to bring the Millers on to Dyslexia Success Stories. Millers, welcome aboard.
Hello.
Hello.
Now tell us what part of the country you're in. You guys are Northeast, or Southwest, or West Coast?
Yeah, we're in Northeast Pennsylvania, so about an hour from Philadelphia.
Fantastic. You know, my parents actually used to run a reading clinic outside of Pennsylvania in a little town called Yardley.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
One
So-
Yardley.
In their 60s, they decided they needed to go open a new clinic, and they left the West Coast and moved to Pennsylvania, Yardley of all places, and ran a reading clinic for a few years and then sold it to some local folks to keep that work going on. So lots of positive memories of Pennsylvania, lots of good people there, and reading's important pretty much anywhere in the world. So Stacy, tell us a little bit about your guys' journey, because usually, sorry, Dad, usually it's mom who figures this out first and says something's not going right. And, that's just kind of how families happen a lot of times. That's not always, but, we'll let mom jump in and say, here's what we saw happening. And Logan will get you to tell us your story on this a little bit as well. And we're just going to have a fun conversation about how much you used to struggle, what you tried and what gains you made, and then what was still not happening, what you tried, what happened next, and where are we at today. That's always the fun part. And I'm going to preface it by one thing. Logan, when you first came on board and we measured your phonological skills, that's the number one predictor of reading skills. Out of 100 kids, guess where you scored? You scored top 10, bottom 5, middle 50. Where do you think your ability to hold on to sounds and judge sounds was? I think it was strong, weak, or like not existent?
18.
18, you're pretty close. It was third. So that means if you were in 100 kids your age, 97 kids had better phonological skills than you did. And we jokingly talk about this, right? Who do you get to blame for having those weaker phonological skills? It's just family genetics. Yeah. Could be dad, could be mom, could be dad's dad. It goes up and down the family tree. That's what happens for all of us. But guess where your skills were at when you finished that Now Foundations program? How strong were your phonological skills? And this is when they did those crazy things with blocks. And they'd say, Logan, if that says Miss Congesterly, show me Miss Congesterly. And you're like, boom, nailing it right then. Guess what score you was now? Middle 50, 75, top 90? What do you think?
93.
You're good. 90. You're in the top 10 by the time you finish. So you literally went from the bottom 10 in phonological processing, but your IQ wasn't down there. So this is not accurate. That's not what your capability is. And you raised it up to the 90th percentile in a nationally normed professional measure, not just a phonological awareness, but it's what we call phonological working memory. You got to hold 5-syllable words and another 5-syllable word, compare and contrast them, judge adding sounds, take away sounds, substituting sounds, shifting sounds, reversing sounds, or they did it with whole syllables too. And boy, you are a rock star at that now. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So then Stacy will let you take it away from there. How did you guys get into this journey of something's not going well and reading's not looking great?
Yeah, so in first grade, he already had the diagnosis of ADHD, but um, he still couldn't really read the books, and I thought he was getting overwhelmed by like the words on the pages, or like if he was getting distracted by the pictures, just
Mhm.
something wasn't right. So we put in the request for the school district to do the evaluation, and it came in, and he, qualified for an IEP, but we were at a private school at the time, and they qualified him under other health impairment because of his ADHD. But then if you looked at his reading and his pseudo words and his, elision and
Mhm.
all of that, it was really low, but they didn't qualify him as a specific learning disability. And I didn't really know that at the time as a behavior analyst. I wasn't really on the academic side
Right.
talking to other professionals, and they're like, well, these gaps are here. So they still gave him a fluency and a reading goal, but they
Right.
turned it on their ADHD. And I don't know, something resonated with me that it just wasn't right, but I really didn't know anything about dyslexia. So then I would say the beginning of second grade, we went to go see a neuropsychologist. And I was like, I really want to seek out the diagnosis for dyslexia. So I had that in my back pocket for school.
Yeah.
If you ever needed. And again, it pretty much came up the same. It was only like 6 or 7 months later. But we did get that diagnosis, and we had to present it to the school. So I'm presenting information to them. And then that's when we found some of those other, popular phonics program.
Mhm.
Started down that road. So that's our beginning.
And let me jump in right there and say, there's a really important point you just brought up, which is schools doing testing versus a private psychologist or neuropsychologist doing testing. They don't have the same goal. And you just described it. The school's goal with testing is not diagnosis. In fact, most schools do not have a psychologist who's even licensed to diagnose. They're not allowed to diagnose with the license they have. So all schools are doing is doing testing to categorize. Do you meet the category of a reading impairment? Do you meet the category of, other health impaired? They're trying to categorize you for qualification for services. But many times that doesn't really help you understand as a parent, like, but what's really going on here? I mean, does he have dyslexia or does he not? And schools will talk around that. They'll say really savvy things like, he has characteristics of dyslexia. Like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because that still doesn't answer my yes or no question. Diagnosis? No diagnosis. But they actually can't answer that question for most schools. So like you did, then you had to go to the private route, which is unfortunate because it's thousands of dollars. It takes a lot of time and money, and it's not any fun for Logan to do a whole bunch more testing all over again because he did testing like that already with the school, and the school actually had enough data to diagnose. They just don't have anybody who's actually licensed to do that. Some schools do. And even if they do, sometimes they still don't want to diagnose because it puts them under certain obligations. They'd rather have a wider latitude to do what they think might be okay. And so that leads parents down the road of still wondering. And so tell me about that with you guys. When you got the school testing versus the neuropsychologist testing, how did that resonate differently for you?
The testing was, they had to do a different test, but they couldn't do the same test in the same year.
Right.
Literally was the same, but we were actually able to get versus them just saying, oh, it's lumped under other health impairments, which gives you a wrong way to view things. I
Right.
can't narrow in on what we needed to do. And I knew nothing about Warren Gillingham, Wilson, any other phonics program.
Right.
I just didn't know anything about it. But if I didn't continue talking to other people and I didn't know anything was wrong, I just followed that, we would have been down just a path of like, he just struggles. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it really was the same type of numbers and tests. But it was able to point me in a direction when I did my research.
Gotcha. Because now you have an idea of what you're looking for. Okay, it is dyslexia, which by the DSM-5, it has another name as well. It's called specific learning disorder with impairment in reading. Those two mean the same thing. People like to also couch and say, yeah, but dyslexia has to have spelling problems. Well, it can. But bottom line is, if you're not reading well, call it dyslexia, call it specific learning disorder with impairment impairment in reading. Doesn't matter what you call it. He needs to get better at reading. And let's work on how do we change those reading skills, because reading is the number one life empowerment skill that affects every class at school. It affects multiple aspects of life. It affects self-esteem. It affects your belief in what you can do. It starts to affect your belief in how smart or not smart you might think you are. And it will wrongly skew your view of your own capabilities and your own abilities. And now there's a new group out of the UK who's wanted to tell people dyslexics have 5 superpowers. I'm like, well, why would you sell yourself short like that? Why would you think just because you're dyslexic, your brain can only have 5 strengths? That's ridiculous. Nobody's brain is limited to just 5 strengths. You can have strengths that are visual. You can have strengths that are auditory. You can have strengths that are reasoning. You can have strengths that are fine motor, that are visual. There's all kinds of strengths the human brain can have. And even though dyslexia by genetics, it didn't guarantee that Logan's going to struggle. It just gave him an increased likelihood that his brain might not pick up the language skills as easily. He might need more explicit, systematic instruction, but not just any old instruction that's been scientifically tested and proven to build the foundational skills first, which is the phonological awareness, the letter sound skills next, then there's the early decoding skills after that, then comes the sight word skills. There's a whole hierarchy of skills we want the brain to be trained to rebuild. And some kids need more explicit, systematic, not just evidence-based, but evidence-based from randomized controlled trials empowerment, because that gives us the best chance to make the best gains. So you then now have an idea of what to do. And how did you guys go about figuring this out? Because unfortunately, this is the worst situation for every parent. I have a diagnosis and I have 1,000 people who all have opinions about what we should do. And they all sound very convincing. And many of them earnestly believe that they are doing the absolute best thing. And so if you go by the court of opinion, you're going to have to try about 100 things to get through all the opinions. But when you're looking for, okay, but what's the science? You'll get a lot of opinions of, no, we have 100 years of science. Well, ask them to see that. And then they really can't produce it. There's a difference between a program being around for about 100 years versus a program actually really having empirical scientific science backing up its effectiveness. So how did you wade through this big morass, murky sea of all the potential things you could do for dyslexia?
So since I'm in the education field, a lot of my, friends and coworkers are teachers. So they, do the different Orton Gillingham, Wilson reading system. And, that's just what's vastly talked about in the schools. So we immediately started that. And that did get his reading to where it was. Like he was actually just able to at least read.
Right.
And then when we got a third evaluation, more an independent evaluation that was paid by the school, he increased some of the reading and the pseudo words actually increased. We were still around that 20th percentile from where he was. He might have been like 3rd, 5th in some areas. Now we're at the 20th. And, just following other people, and I followed live, due process cases that you were on, and I, was able to link to your talks. And I'm just like, yeah, there's just these gaps. And if we finish the next 6 books of this program, those 6 books don't have anything different than the first 6 books besides different word patterns, obviously. Right. So I'm like, that gap will still be there. You know what I mean? We'll still always struggle. We'll still always need tutoring. So, so kind of we started that, and then I started down that path to kind of streamline the missing pieces.
And figure out the puzzle. Unfortunately, you're now forced to figure out the puzzle. It's crazy because if this was a medical situation and Logan had symptoms that were high fever, white pustules on the back of his throat, complaint of a sore throat, you're going to go to the pediatrician. That's his doctor. And they're going to tell you, yeah, we've studied this. Here's what science says that's most likely to be. Here's how we test for it. And here's the number one treatment because research has proven that. And there's no question. They know exactly what to do for some of these common illnesses or ailments that happen. And let's say strep throat is common, but it ain't as common as dyslexia is. So we have a more common event called dyslexia or reading disabilities. And yet we don't have a go-to person for families to go to who is the trusted, proven expert to guide you exactly what to do. But let's back up from that for a second. Logan, buddy, let's get your perspective. What do you remember about reading? When do you remember it being hard for you in school? Do you have any memory of that?
Yeah, like raising my hand during class. And I'm scared to read stuff around the class because I feel like I'm gonna mess up the word.
Yeah, that doesn't feel very good, does it?
No, it does not.
No. And so you didn't want to be called on to read aloud. So then some people say, don't ever ask dyslexic kids to read out loud. That is traumatizing. It's torturous. I'm like, okay, but it's kind of an important skill because maybe he wants to read a reading at church someday. Maybe he wants to read something in a school play someday or do something in a public event. You want to be able to read out loud if you want to. So if we avoid it, the brain's very clear. Don't work on it, it doesn't get any better. So that's like we're going to leave them with impaired skills. Why would we leave a child without the ability to read out loud? It's kind of an important skill. So tell us about that first work you did. You did those phonics, and what we call that, Logan, we call it letters down to sounds, or they call it print to speech. Those are the OG phonics, Wilson, Barton, Slauson, Sonaday. There's so many now I can't even name them all off. But they're taking you to letters. How did that feel like, and what do you remember doing in those programs?
It felt like kind of scary
Mhm.
for a little of it.
A lot of information to memorize.
Yeah. Like,
So how do they help you remember it? What do they have to do so you can actually remember those syllable types, those rules?
just like keep on doing it.
Yeah.
They used this like to help me like keep on doing it, and eventually I got the hang of it, and it was not scary anymore.
Good. Which help? Did it feel like your brain was learning something?
For sure, yes.
Yeah. So your brain is perfectly capable of learning, Logan, 100%. Now I'm going to ask you a fun science question. Logan, how many brain cells in your brain? Give me a big number. Big number. What was it?
500.
500. Okay, you ready? Try 100 billion. The human brain has 100 billion brain cells. That is a lot of brain cells. But here's a caveat. Your brain's power doesn't come from the number of cells it has. It comes from the number of connections or wires that it builds that let one part talk to the other part. And they talk in really cool ways. Sometimes it's an electrical signal down a wire. Sometimes the electrical signal jumps out into this salty fluid in your brain and jumps over to another wire, kind of like takes a shortcut. It's got this crazy name called saltatory conduction. Your brain has super capabilities of making connections and building new skills. So let me ask you another fun science question. How many wiring connections in the typical brain when it has 100 billion brain cells? And let me give you a clue. It's going to be more than 200 billion. So give me a number bigger than 200 billion. We're testing your number knowledge now.
500 million.
Good guess, but not right. You ready for this? 100 trillion connections. The typical brain has like 100 trillion connections. So you have this amazing supercomputer in your head, and you have to thank mom and dad for that because their genetics helped build it, and it works really well. And as you get the right practice, it makes new wiring in the language side. And that's how you went from the 3rd percentile to the 90th percentile in those funny tasks you did with those color blocks and early on with those mouth pictures. Did your brain make new connections?
Yes.
Did it get easier?
Yes, for sure.
100%. And that's what our brain is capable of doing. So, but after you learn that first program, Miss Angela wants to tell you congratulations, and she's glad to see parents involved in this. We are too. Mom and dad play critical roles in keeping that literacy a key piece. After that program, you got a little bit better at being able to read words, but you really weren't 100% on grade level. And usually it would be, if there are words you hadn't seen before, they're really kind of hard to figure out.
Yes.
And many times, let me ask you this, did your spelling improve too, or your spelling didn't improve much at all?
My spelling definitely.
The old programs.
A little, I guess.
Yeah, that first program, when you're doing print down to speech, which is those phonics programs, it's developmentally the reverse of how the brain learns. Let me say it this way. Logan, do you think your brain learns to read and spell first, or do you think your brain learns to speak first, or sing music first? Which one does it learn to do first?
Speak first?
Yeah, speaking skills come first. And then reading and spelling skills come later on. So adding that all together helps put those pieces together. You have people jumping in from all over, Logan. They think your story is really cool. All right? Oh, there's mom. Excellent. All right. So you now got a little bit better at reading skills, but spelling didn't change that much. And mom was still searching. And how did you feel about doing another program? Were you excited? Yeah, mom, let's do another dyslexia program. Or you're like, no, mom, no more programs.
I was like that, but then I really like it now.
All right. So initially you're like, mom, really? More dyslexia programs? One of my students. He was about your age when he came to the Morris Center Clinic. He was almost 11, almost 12. And his mom made him come for the whole summer. He lost his whole summer to come to a Morris Center Clinic. But in 4 months, we raised his reading skills by about 5 to 6 grade levels. But at the beginning of the summer, he's like, this is the worst summer ever. This is horrible. Well, how could you do this to me, Mom? This is torturous. But now he's excelling in baseball. He's excelling in football. He's excelling in school. And guess how much tutoring he has to do now?
0.
Exactly. No tutoring. He's actually now a junior National Honor Society member, whereas when he came to the Morris Center, he had tutoring every day. He had tutoring for about 4 years by that time. It seemed like tutoring was never going to go away. So thankfully, you agreed to do another program. And what was it like at the beginning? And we tell people, this is going to be really weird. Like, Logan, have you ever seen the movie Karate Kid?
I think so, yeah.
There's one part where the sensei makes the kid wax his car. And he's telling him, wax on, wax off. And the kid get upset because guess what he was there to learn? Karate or car washing?
Karate.
Yeah. And do you think he felt like he was doing karate if he's washing this old guy's car and waxing it?
No.
No, he's like, I'm not here to wash and wax your car. I'm here to learn karate. And the sensei's like, wax on, wax off. And so the kid does it. And then he realizes later on, hey, this is building defensive moves in karate that make me stronger and blocking strong. So the old guy, gray hair, kind of knew what he was doing, but it didn't make any sense in the beginning. What did you see first when you started that Now Foundations program? Was it letters, or was it crazy pictures of the mouth, or was it a xylophone?
Pictures of the mouth.
Yeah, and how did that feel initially?
It felt like, what are we doing? Like, I didn't even know what I'm doing. But eventually I moved on, and I felt very proud of myself, and I have been doing really well.
Excellent. So did those pictures start to make sense later on? Because in the beginning, you're like, Mom, they think I don't know how to move my mouth, Mom. They think I can't make a butt sound. They think I'm a baby, Mom. Is that how it felt?
A little bit.
And then how did you figure out what those mouth pictures were helping you do?
They're helping me do switching out letters.
Mm-hmm. So did they add letters to the mouth pictures later on?
Yes. They use that, like what I was using, but then use it to like a better, something bigger, like.
Cool. And then what happened to the mouth pictures? Like, did they stay forever? Or did they go away?
I don't think they went away. I think it just moved on.
Okay. But did you have to keep practicing the mouth pictures, or they just go to practicing with letters now?
I practiced in letters.
Gotcha. And how come? How come you didn't need the mouth pictures anymore? How are you going to know what a lip popper is if you don't have the lip popper picture?
Because we did it so much, I just knew it. So I can move on to other stuff that's for it. Like I'm doing that for that.
Excellent. So here's a fun test. Ready, Logan? Give me a loud lip popper. Can you do that one? And then turn on the voice.
Buh?
Yep, there you go. Buh. So do you have your mouth with you wherever you go?
Yes.
Yeah, you can't leave it at home, can you? It's like, it's always there. So that's why these crazy pictures help you learn what your mouth is doing. And then your brain's now building a 4-way sound processing system. We call it phonological awareness. It's part visual, it's part auditory, and it's part mouth movement and mouth touch. And then we got these funny names, which is the frontal lobe of your brain is beginning to recognize, hey, that's a lip popper. Hey, that's a tongue tapper. And you're building this 4-way system to have better ability to judge number of sounds in a word. Is it 2-sound word, 4-sound word, the order of the sounds, what's first, second, third, and those 5 changes. You had to figure out, did they take away? Did they add? Did they omit? Did they substitute? Or did they repeat sounds? And so those gave you that idea to figure all those pieces out. And then what happened to your book reading? As you got better and better at sounding out 2-sound words, and then 3-sound words, and 4-sound words, how many syllables did you get up to? Do you know? Was it 3, 5, or 7-syllable words?
7.
Yeah, you could probably do 7. And with the blocks only go as high as 5.
So it's actually more than I'm supposed to. I was learning 5, but I can go even higher than that because I was learning it.
Yes. So we know once you can do 5, you actually can do 15. Like if I asked you for fun to say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, it might take a couple practice times, but guess what? You think you'd be able to do it?
For sure. Yes.
Yeah. And then if I asked you to spell supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, do you think you'd give it a good shot, a good try?
I could probably do it by piece of piece.
Because now your brain can hold on to all those parts of the word and break down the first syllable, the second syllable, the third, and then it becomes a much easier task. So this is not what we call print to speech. This is called speech first, the language processor first. That's what mom built before she read. It's what dad would be working on before he learned to read. And then we go to the letters second and third later on. So mom, your thoughts about what you see Logan doing. Did you watch any of the sessions and see how crazy this looked?
Oh yeah. I at first wanted to sign on to another one down here because I was like sitting next to him, and he was getting distracted in the beginning. But it was a learning curve because it's every day. But it definitely. I mean, before it was like once a week here and once a week there, and he moaning and groaning about tutor. This got the pattern, the routine. He was learning something and just build upon. Like there was no gaps, and it was just. It really made sense, and then. Of course, then I learned about the whole speech to print approach, and it does make sense. You know what I mean? But again, it's just not as widely talked about, and it needs to be because we would have did this back in first and second grade. I mean, we still found it early. I think the end of third, we were talking to you guys, and then we started that June. That summer. Right after school, we were like, "You're starting." At the beach.
Yeah. And dad, this is the flip side question for dad. It's like, how did mom convince you that we should spend money on this? Usually we got mom funding the program and dad's got the purse string saying, let's think about this. Is this a good investment or not? How did mom convince you this is the right investment?
I always sort of trusted my wife's gut. She does a lot of research in the back end. So when she says something needs to be done, it needs to be done. So in the beginning, I said, you're crazy. But then what I started seeing within the first, say, month, 6 weeks, I would take him to football routinely. And I would see a different confidence level he'd have.
Nice.
With hearing plays, carrying him out, he'd stand a little higher. And then I'd see his work come home, his writing skills increase dramatically. So from there, I was like, wow, this is interesting. Even though he's stuck in his room doing all these mouth sounds and stuff, I knew something was going on in there.
And that's a great example, Dad, is you're seeing the outcomes.
Yeah.
Because if the program's working, it shouldn't be that I have to give you some testing to prove that it actually worked. It should be, you should see it happening as he's driving down the car and looking at street signs. You should see the reading skills getting better at menus at the restaurant, or books he picks up, or something he sees on the newspaper. And that's a great example about football, because when you have better phonological awareness, better language processing, you have a better chance for better comprehension. And remember 1, 2, 3, or 5-step directions. So Logan, you're a football guy?
Yes.
What position do you play?
I play lineman.
All right. So would it surprise you if I told you that my original Morris Center clinic was just down the street from the Florida Gators, University of Florida? And on more than one occasion, the university's assistant athletic director contacted me and said, I've got a top-notch athlete and he can't pass the freshman English class. So guess what they asked me to do?
Like help him with it?
Yeah. And he was 20. He wasn't 9. He was 20 years old and he couldn't pass his freshman English class. In fact, he'd already failed the class 3 times. And mom and dad understand you only get so many times to try, and then the university kicks you out. Well, this guy, his father had been in the NFL for more than 5 years. So they knew this was a high caliber prospect because he got the genetics of an NFL dad. And the Alumni Association knew that this could be a big donor family. So they did not want him not to leave the university. So they sent him to the Morris Center, and we did about 800 hours of 3 programs. So we had to do the Now Foundations program and build that phonological processor, reading, spelling, auditory memory system. Then we had to do the Now Mental Imagery program, which you've already started. Does that seem weird as well?
No, I think it has helped me so far.
Okay.
I think it's going to keep on helping me.
All right. And how far are you at right now? Are you doing words or sentences?
More like she's putting up a picture and leaving like the page, and then I have to like explain it and everything, and she has to like think it in her mind and re-say what I said.
Gotcha. So you're trying to paint a movie in her brain,
Yes.
and your words have to paint the movie. So if you give words that are very vague, like I saw the thing by the place next to the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You think we got the same movie for those words? Any of us in this video channel have the same movie? No, we can't. The words are too vague. But Logan, if I said I saw the small white poodle walk down the brown dirt road next to the green grassy field at an orange sunset. You think we got the same movie now?
Yes, I can actually image that right now.
Yeah.
So now you're working on this right side of the brain, which is kind of the imagery side. That's the comprehension part of the brain. And you've got better reading skills, better spelling skills. That's mostly left. You're building the imagery skills on the right. And then you're going to be using the two together. But with this football player, we had to do a third program because that's not the class he had to pass. He had to pass his grammar and writing composition class. So our third program is now grammar and writing. He had to learn how to write sentences, write topic sentences, write paragraphs, write 3-paragraph essays, write 5-paragraph essays. And so it took us about 800 hours to get him through all of that. And then guess what he did with his freshman English class? Did he pass it or failed it?
I think he passed it.
He did. You're spot on. He passed the freshman English class. He played football only for one more year at UF. And then guess what he did?
He got an NFL.
He did. He went early draft NFL, got picked up, and he played in the NFL for about 7 years. And Dad, your point about the plays, that's what actually helped the coaches bring him to us because he couldn't learn any of the plays in the playbook because he actually had visual perceptual difficulties, different than dyslexia. It's not part of dyslexia. It's a different learning difficulty. And he couldn't remember where all the X and O's and what they even meant. And they couldn't tell him the plays because he couldn't hold on to all the steps. So they actually had to put their arms on his shoulders and walk him through the plays. And he could only learn 5 plays. And it drove the head coach crazy because every time this guy was in, he could only call 5 offensive plays because that's all this position this guy could learn. Over time, they started seeing, hey, he's learning more plays. Hey, he actually speaks more clearly. We can understand what he's saying. Hey, he's actually learning. We were also doing OT with him too. That's motor skills and coordination. And he couldn't learn some of the routines in the weight room, which are called like a clean and jerk. He couldn't learn how to do the clean and jerk. They showed him again and again. They told him, and he just couldn't coordinate his body to do it. So they gave up. After he started doing some OT, he changed those sensory motor skills, and he could do the clean and jerk as well. And that helped him perform better in the NFL combine, so he could actually get to go to the NFL.
And that's what I was finding was the plays and his physical ability was always there.
Yeah.
So when I started seeing this piece come together, I said, "Wow, this is crazy." We'd drive down the street, he'd be reading the signs out loud,
Nice.
and that never happened, until this program. So we were sort of looking at each other like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." So
The money's paying off. It's going to work. And the good news is it's not 3 to 7 years. Logan, do you know how long you did that first program? Because I looked up your dates. I looked up what's your first date, what was your last date. You know how long it was? How many months? Let me say it this way. I think it was 2, 8, 12 months long.
I feel like around like 6 months.
Close. It's about 8 months. From June to November. Sorry, June to February. From June to February. Yeah. It was only about 8 months. You finished the whole program in 8 months. Now, some days you did more than one session a day.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Just like keep me like to remember what I was doing and to just keep it going.
Yeah. And what we know about the brain is if you practice something more hours per day, your learning becomes faster. It maximizes and makes even more progress in a shorter amount of time. So mom and dad knew that sometimes you had more time available. We could do more sessions per day. We actually have some kids. We've had some teenagers who are like high school kids. They did not have 8 months to wait. They needed to get this stuff done right away. They would do 3 or even 4 sessions per day during the summertime. And they finished it some of our high school kids finish in less than 100 hours.
Wow.
Because they've got to. We can't do it during high school. They can't take an hour out of the day. They can't miss a class. They can't lose a credit. It's a whole different, ball of challenges to deal with at the high school level.
Yeah, I think by August we were like, all right, I think we should double up. And then when we started doubling up, it was like an 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we did like a 10.
Mm-hmm.
And he had all day. I was like, oh, we should have did this back in June. I was like, and then school started, and we did. He did something after school, and then he went right to football. But like, David said that he was just confident. He came home from school, he did your class, and he went to football like just so confident. And
Nice.
now we're starting baseball, and he's in this next program, and we see it. He's confident going to school. Like it's not daunting or
Mhm.
like more pressure. He's actually more confident. That was like probably our first clue altogether before him out of learning support and his
Right.
test, whatever. That was probably our first, clue.
Because prior to that time, when you guys are seeing the struggle, typically the number one impact of struggle is lack of confidence. And there's a phrase that we use that in brain science. We say competence builds confidence. So if you can't do something, then you actually shouldn't have confidence because you can't do it. It's realistic. It's a reasonable expectation, and it's a reasonable feeling to have when you can't do it, or you've been very poor at doing it, or you've not do it very easily, or there's always struggle. But what happened to your ability to read over time, Logan?
I got better at it.
So then what happened to your confidence?
My confidence was very high. I just knew I was going to do good with it. So now I'm actually reading with the class, like raising my hand to actually read.
No way. They're not supposed to do that with dyslexic kids. That's horrible. Who's doing that? Why? Why, Logan? Why are you raising your hand to read in class?
Because I just know the words now because of this program.
Awesome. Because you can do it. You got the skills. How did you begin to believe you could do it? Like what had to happen to convince you that you were going to be able to read those words?
I just kept on like reading like chapter books, and then I realized like I know every single word. So one day I just raised my hand and I read fine, perfectly fine.
Excellent. Was it scary the first time you raised your hand?
No.
All right. Awesome. How did you feel after you did the reading?
I felt really proud of myself. Like I think it was a great idea to do this program, and it helped me a lot.
Excellent. Yeah. So we're off on the new course. You're off on the new change. Logan, you've literally rewired parts of your brain. That's what learning is. I'm also a published brain imaging scientist, and I spent decades studying the brain. I mean, like 10 years studying the brain after brain damage from stroke, and we did fMRI brain imaging. When we measure brain activity, and it's a new skill, Mom will ask you this one. If it's a brand new skill, do you think there's going to be a large volume of activity or a small activity when it's a brand new skill? You got a 50-50 chance.
Big?
No, you're right. It's big. It's a big, like many areas are trying to help out. And as you get better and better at it, guess what happens? The volume of activity gets smaller and smaller and smaller because the brain gets more and more specialized and the wiring communicates more quickly and more easily. And remember we talked about how many brain cells, right?
Yeah.
How many brain cells in the human brain, Logan? The science test.
500 billion?
Close. About 100 billion.
100 billion.
How many connections in the human brain?
What was that? 500 trillion?
Close. 100 trillion. It's 100, 100 billion, 100 trillion. So you've made more connections, but guess how many connections one brain cell can be involved in?
One.
Okay. Mom, what do you think? How many connections can one brain cell be involved in?
I have no idea.
Probably.
Yes. Give us a number, any number. Dad doesn't know either. It's okay.
Yeah,
Say
he's
100.
science.
Good? Yeah. Try 40,000.
Oh.
One brain cell can be a conduit or part of the network of up to 40,000 connections in the brain. It's amazing potential. But the brain only makes wiring in one way. It's called experience-dependent neuroplasticity. It means if we didn't give them the right experience to know what a sounds look like, what a sounds sound like, what part of the mouth is moving, how's it moving, if we don't give them the practice of that, it doesn't build that skill. And then we have to go to the next step. And now let's use that knowledge. What do I feel, hear, see in my mouth? To what's the first sound? What's the second sound? Now we're judging order of sounds. Now we're judging, and we're giving them all these explicit experiences and practices in a very developmental hierarchy. Basic skills first, mid-level skills second, advanced skills last. And we've spent decades studying how this all builds. Now, Logan, do you know that I'm dyslexic?
No, I did not.
All right. Well, I am. But guess how old I was when I did not as nice a mouth pictures as you had. I did not get full color photos of someone's mouth and red lips and everything. I had little black and white line drawings, like a stick figure. Okay. Guess what age I was when I got that same work you did? I had to learn lip poppers. I had to learn tongue tappers, tongue scrapers, skinny fat air. Guess how old I was?
15?
I'm thankfully no. Thankfully, I was 5.
Okay.
I was 5 years old because when I was 5 years old, my brother who was 7 couldn't read at all. He was severely dyslexic. At the end of first grade, he was a non-reader. My parents kind of value education, and my brother told my mom and dad, I'm not going back to school because they're not teaching me to read, so I'm not going there. And he was a pretty stubborn guy, and they knew there was a problem about to happen here. So lucky for us, my aunt and uncle were world famous for their work in dyslexia. And they wrote their first dyslexia program in 1969. So I got help in 1971, before your mom was even born, long time ago. All right. So it's a long time ago. But good news is we've gotten better and better and better at learning even more about how the brain works. So we can actually help empower not only a 9-year-old like you, but guess how old the oldest person is who's done that now Foundations online class? What's an old guy's age?
What's our oldest student?
This will be fun to hear.
Yeah.
89.
All right, that's good. I'm happy to hear you think that's an old guy and you're not going to tell me 45. Actually, 74. The oldest man we've had online, and the oldest adult, rather, man or woman, is 74 years old. He still couldn't spell well, and he still couldn't read well, and it still bothered him. Now, we could try to give him a whole bunch of false hopes that he has 5 superpowers and pretend that he outthinks people who are reading skills. That's a bunch of nonsense from science. There's no science that proves dyslexics have more skills than readers have. And why we'd even think that is true is just mind-boggling to me, because everybody's brain has the same potential for memory skills, language skills. The difference is, what's the level of potential your brain has? Is it 50th percentile potential? Is it 80%? That's what IQ tries to measure. What's your level? But you've got all the skills as long as you don't have any brain damage. So it doesn't matter if you're 8 or 80. It's still nice to be able to read and spell. And it doesn't matter if you're 8 or 80, the brain can still do it. It still has the ability to rewire and make those new connections.
I have a question about IQ. We were talking about this the other day. Because working memory can maybe get better from this program, and again, I'm not trying to make his IQ, we were just curious, well, did that move at all with working memory? I'm sure it has to be improved, and we have not done any evaluation since, but we were just curious.
Well, when you look at the IQ test, there's usually about 10 subtests in it, and they clump together into small, they call composite scores. One's more verbal comprehension, one is working memory, one is visual perceptual skills or performance, performance skills. And when you look at his profile, you want to see, well, how many are high and how many are low. And the problem with the IQ test, if you've had any reading difficulties or any spelling difficulties or any speaking difficulties, the IQ test will not be accurate because your learning difficulties will interfere with your ability to do parts of the IQ test. And that's not because of your IQ, it's because you have a developmental difficulty in reading or language or something affecting parts of memory. So if he has some areas, one that's going to be commonly low for anybody who has dyslexia is the working memory subtest. And that is part auditory memory and part auditory rehearsal. Both the programs he's doing can change those skills. Now, the number one correlate with IQ is if we don't have any language disorders. If there's no language processing problem and it's just IQ, what correlates most close to your IQ? It's actually receptive vocabulary. That's called the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test. And all they do in that test is the examiner says a word, shows you a book that has got 4 pictures on it. And they say, point to the picture that goes with that word. So they might say horse, and you got to point to the horse. And it keeps getting harder and harder and harder. And they're going to measure what is your actual vocabulary knowledge. Vocabulary correlates at IQ with 0.8, so really high correlation. So if on your neuropsych testing, IQ came in at 50th percentile, but receptive vocabulary is 75th percentile, then odds are his IQ is more like 75th percentile. And so then we've got a better measure. Now, over time, if we're changing parts of his skills that were what was difficult for him on the IQ test, yes, we're not changing his IQ. We're taking away the barriers that were interfering with his ability to do part of the IQ test. So here's an example. I had a boy come to the clinic in Ocala, the Morris Center there. And this was, even before we had the Now Company program. It's like about 2009, 2010. We didn't build the online company until 2013. So in 2010, he had an IQ of 72. That is like borderline low IQ. But he had some language skills that were like 40th percentile. Well, that tells a neuropsychologist, hopefully, that you must have a higher IQ because you can't outperform your IQ. Because he didn't just have one skill at about 40th percentile. He had several skills in OT testing at 40th percentile. He had several skills on the speech language testing at 40th percentile. And even a couple parts of the IQ test were higher than, a 70 is like about, 10th percentile. And so that tells you there's something not quite right. Well, today, when that boy finished all the programs the Morris Center is providing, his IQ came in at 94.
Oh, wow.
So now he's right smack dab about the 40th percentile, kind of where those other scores were. Today, he's in his 20s. He's no longer 12. After we did those several months of intervention, usually it's about 4 months of work in that intensive summer program. It's funny, we have a new name for it. It's called the Intensive Empowerment Program. It's what IEP really should be doing for you. So this is our new IEP program at the Morris Center, but it's the Intensive Empowerment Program. When we empowered his brain, he then went on to college. He got a degree in film studies, digital film studies, and now he's actually a fully employed, working film delivery, film digitizer, film, not producer, but film study specialist. And that's what he wanted to do. And that's what he's doing because he could do the college degree for that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So the short answer is, the IQ should change, but we didn't really change the IQ. We removed some of the barriers that were interfere with his ability to do the IQ test. And you'll already know what might be more, if you look across the whole neuropsych test battery, how many other skills are higher than his IQ and how high are they? That gives you a better idea of where his IQ probably is.
Yeah. The verbal comprehension was his highest. So
Good.
that's for, we were like the other ones were lower, but it's definitely there's other barriers. So we're not going to make him any smarter, but
Yep. No, but you want him to function. It's kind of like saying,
potential.
where's his verbal comprehension? Like 75th percentile?
Yeah, I think it was like 70.
Okay. So Logan, let me give you a category for that. Do you like cars?
Yeah.
Okay. Your mom and dad gave you a Ferrari brain. Okay. 70th percentile is like you got a Ferrari living in there. But it's got to be firing on all 8 cylinders for the Ferrari to really get all the power it's designed for. By doing the work you did with the Now Programs company, we've started tuning up that brain. So now it's firing more of those more cylinders are firing. So it's going to be able to achieve more in line with what its design and its engineering is already built to do. Guess who you get to thank for your Ferrari brain?
My mom?
Oh, me and Bob this time.
It's 50-50. It's both mom and dad. Absolutely. A little bit of each helps you build that Ferrari brain. Mom and dad each have their own strengths and weaknesses. You got a mixture of them yourself. But in general, that design, that engineering is not a Hyundai. It's not a Chevy Chevette, something your mom and dad might have heard of before, but it's like a Ferrari brain. You got a really powerful brain. And now your reading skills are closer to that Ferrari power. And then your spelling skills should keep getting stronger and stronger each year. And then now as you get to that Now mental imagery program, you're training that right side, building those imagery skills, your listening comprehension is going to get stronger. Your reading comprehension is going to get stronger. And your verbal expression skills are going to get stronger. And guess what that means for you in trying to convince mom and dad about something you want to do? You're going to get better at it or worse?
Better.
Yeah. So sorry, mom and dad. There's another flip side to this is we're now building a little better negotiator. And you're going to get hit with more negotiation and more challenges, but it's good because we want him to try to perform at his full potential and build up his skills. We had one little girl who at age 10, she could not go to school anymore. She was so full of anxiety, depression, because she struggled so much. The psychologist told her mom, get her out of school immediately before she has a nervous breakdown. We rebuilt all her skills in about 4 months' time, and then we did math just online for about a year. And then she got stronger and stronger. So at age 15, she lives in a different country. At age 15, she told her parents, I'm ready to go to boarding school. And they're like, whoa, we're not sure that's a good idea. You were so fragile when you're 10, 11. So guess how she convinced her mom and dad that she was ready to go to boarding school? You know what a PowerPoint is? Or a slideshow? She went and created a slideshow, pros and cons of Olivia going to boarding school. Her mom is a Harvard grad. Okay. Mom's quite bright. Dad is a helicopter pilot. He's also quite bright. And she just blew him away. And they sent her to boarding school. Today, she's been there for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. She's excelling at boarding school and she's doing what she wants to do. And she's got the skills to do it. So, well, Logan, what are you going to do with your skills? What's coming first? What grade are you in right now?
4th.
All right. How do you think fourth grade's going to go?
What happened this year so far?
Like,
Is fourth grade harder or easier?
easier. Like, it's
All right. And how come? Why is it easier?
because I just kept on reading books and doing this program like every single day at 7:00 in the morning.
7:00 in the morning. Oh my goodness.
And
Are
I
you awake yet? And so now you're doing the second program. And so what do you think that will help with fourth grade? How's that going to make fourth grade easier for you?
by like reading and writing. Like it
Mhm.
helped me like a lot with like reading and writing. Like since I'm out of learning support, I can actually write paragraphs and do TDAs. And I,
No, wait, say that again. You're where? Did you say you're out? Out of learning support. No, that's not supposed to happen, Logan. If you're dyslexic, you got to have learning support your whole life. What kind of horrible school are you at? But how come? How come you don't need learning support?
because I've done this program and I just need help with that stuff. But when I get that help I need and I'm done with that, I can actually do what I love to do.
So you don't need the support anymore. You can do it yourself.
Yes.
Fantastic. And what we always are advocating is better awareness of learning difficulties, better initial supports, but better empowerment. If you just do awareness and supports, you leave people impaired. Why would we do that? It's awareness, it's support, and then it's empowerment to make stronger skills. So, Stacy and Dad, how do you guys feel about where Logan's at today? How's this worked out?
I'm stoked. He really likes it. He really enjoys the program, actually.
Mhm.
It's not a struggle first thing in the morning to go do it. So he does it before he goes to school, but he looks forward to it. So it's really rewarding, actually. So
Yeah, and then I mean his ELA tests, like it's easy. Like we might review like a few topics. He's like, all right, what's the question going to be about? I'm like, oh, we got to compare and contrast, these things about the two paths. And he's like, oh, okay, so I'm just going to compare the first story and what they talked about. He's like, all right, I got this. Like he is like, and then TDAs he mentioned, they're the text dependent analysis, but he like literally says he enjoys it because he just knows how to do it.
Nice.
I don't know if he like loves to do it, but he's so confident. So yeah, he's completely out of learning support. His ELA test is like smooth as anything. We don't need to really work on it. The only thing I think that is still a struggle this year was more math this year.
Yes.
But it's not facts and fluency. It's more, it was like the fractions
Right.
and the word problems.
Yes.
So.
And your movie making skills will actually begin to start help math as well. Because you can start to picture what fractions look like on a pie. You can start to image, the numbers as you're doing equations or you're doing multiplication, you're getting more concepts and you're using your imagery with math as well. And so that will make math program even easier too. How about his speaking skills? He's pretty able to explain stuff to us. And you said he feels pretty confident at making those comparison contrasts. Has anything changed about how he can communicate with you guys over time?
Yeah, I mean, we always joke though. He still would say the thing over there and the thing over there. So I feel like that was still hanging on. But the biggest byproduct, which I thought wouldn't come till later, was his writing. And I think it was the spelling. I mean, he wrote some notes here and, he spelled the word writing with the W and the R in front. Like, he's so fluent now. Before it'd be like, what sound goes here? What letter goes here? And I just think that he had all what he wanted to say. So, I mean, we still need to work on writing and grammar per se, but the writing fluency just got so much better from the spelling. So I think the oral might need to come with this program. I mean, he's good at talking, but really to make that description, where that poodle is and so forth. But the writing is so fluent, because of the spelling skills.
Yeah, when I was writing come home, I looked at it and I said, well, that's not his. That's probably my daughter's, who's 8 years old. She's very good at handwriting. And then I was like, wow, that's really impressive, actually. That's a lot better than mine, sadly. But yeah, I think it's very good.
Nice job, Logan. You want to read me your notes that you wrote? You want to tell me what you wrote down?
Okay. What did you struggle with? Raising hand, reading class, spelling, writing, test, and ELIT, and math.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember from the program? Mouth movements, sounds, and reading stories. What do you do well with now? Out of learning support, correct test writing, and getting answers right.
Fantastic. That's great writing, and it's also great reading, Logan. Well, Miller family, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, but let me ask you guys to end it with just one thing. Mom and Dad, what would you tell their parents? Because our goal, part of the reason we do these podcasts, is we still get the number one pushback is the Now program can't take months. It can't be done in 8 months. Everyone knows it takes 3 to 7 years to change reading skills. Like, yeah, that's true if you're using a phonics print down to speech approach, but that's not what we're doing. It's also true if the program has never been tested scientifically and proven to be highly effective, which the Now program has, in 3 5-year randomized controlled trials, which is like, it's the science that builds penicillin and all major medical discoveries. What would you share with families who are trying to figure out what program to use? How do I choose what to do? What is your wisdom for others?
I think, like I said before, one of your talk really resonated with me about the data and taking the standard score. Then you want to give them their potential. Whatever his potential is, I want him to get there. And when it was all centered around that, like I just knew it was based off of data and not just based off of, someone, just making another program. And then also when you said about the prescription, like in the medical field, we just don't decide how much antibiotic you need to take and how often. They don't change it. You have to take it this, and this. So that's another thing, again, based off of data. When we do any other popular programs, I can only afford 1 day. I can only do 2 days. And it's like, you won't get the same results. So that was another thing. And then also the months might be hard, but I think when people are doing tutoring once or twice, if they only do once, you're getting 4 sessions a month. But in your program or this program, it's 20 sessions. So when they think 8 months, they're like, no way can this work. But they're not doing the 20 times the 8 and realizing how many sessions they're getting. You're not just getting 4 sessions or 8 sessions if you do double. So I think when they look at it, they're looking at it by months and like, oh my God, how can this work? So just the data and, that, all resonated with me because that's what I, look for. And, we can't just be saying, well, I have availability 1 time a week to do this and so forth. So
that matters. All great points. Dad, what are your thoughts? You have other dads who are like, what are we talking about here?
Well, what I think, everybody do your own research, obviously follow and do, that make your own opinion of things. But realistically, this makes sense to me because 5 days a week, it's a true commitment. Make sure you're ready for that commitment. And once you commit to it, it's 45-minute sessions. That's right in the block of learning span, especially my attention span. So I think you can take a lot. It's very powerful to consistently do that 5 days a week, and stick to that commitment. And you'll definitely see results off of that.
And that's how you build patterns with any behavior. Yeah. I mean, at the behavioral analyst, if you're going to build a new skill, you can't just do it once a week and 2 times a week. You have to do things for a good 2 weeks to even build a habit.
100%. You guys are speaking science to the scientists and to the viewers and listeners as well. So, well, Miller family, thank you again for your time. Thanks for sharing your personal story of Logan, are you a dyslexia success story?
For sure.
100%. For sure. No doubt about it. And the good news is We're not going to keep doing any more of this stuff. We're not going to go back and do more reading tutoring or more spelling tutoring. You now have the foundational skills, which is why the full name of that program is Now Foundations for Speech, Language, Reading, and Spelling. That's the developmental hierarchy, and you've gotten through it. Now you're doing Now Mental Imagery, and its full name is Now Mental Imagery for Language, Comprehension, Memory, and Reasoning. That's the hierarchy there. Once you've done those 2 programs, you're never going back to that stuff. We're never going to do it again. It's going to give you the tools, give you the skills that the more you use them, guess what's going to happen? As you use those skills, do you think they're going to get stronger, stay the same, or get worse?
Get better.
100%. You've already done it. You're using them. They're getting stronger and stronger. They're getting better and better. And it's great. And one of your instructors wants to say, he remembers you. This is Stefan. Thank you, Stefan. Yep. Congrats. Great work. And all of our instructors actually take a personal interest in what they're doing. They love this opportunity to work with great kids like Logan, whether you're 9 or 79, doesn't matter. And seeing you build those skills, get stronger and stronger, then you're off and running. And the sky's the limit for you, Logan, because, ready? How many brain cells, Logan?
100 billion.
Fabulous. And how many wiring connections?
100 trillion.
Knocking it out of the park, buddy. Great job. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you in 2 weeks for another dyslexia success story.
Thank you.